Okay, let's get into this. Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we've got a really fascinating stack of sources. They're dense, almost philosophical, and they come from a corporate document leak titled The Quiet War of Mirrors.
And this gives us a rare look inside a high-stakes and a pretty ruthless operational environment. We're talking about the Helix and Thorn Corporation.
Right.
The source material shows how things like finance, logistics, and morality don't just, intersect. They actively collide.
And our mission today isn't just to follow the plot points. We want to extract the underlying mechanisms of power and control detailed in these documents. It's almost like a blueprint for how modern ambition is architected.
It is.
And what strikes me right out of the gate is how terrifyingly self-aware this corporation is about its own nature.
Oh, absolutely. The documents practically open with a psychological profile of the company. The setting is described as a place that dreamed through ledgers. And it says that the classic office mask, the corporate smile, it wasn't an ornament, it was a contract.
Yeah.
They openly use these psychological frameworks to analyze their own structure.
It's like corporate culture as group therapy, but in the worst way. Using Freud, the board is described as a superego, cold and glittering. The trading floor is the raw, untamed id banging on a desk, and the executive team is just this poor ego trying to, I don't know, schedule a war between them.
And if you're more of a Jungian, you'd recognize that chilling observation about the elevators full of shadows, the ones that did not belong to bodies.
Yeah, that really paints a picture.
It's that feeling of pervasive, unseen anxiety. It clings to the glass partitions and it smiles when the room is empty. I mean, it's a workplace where the myths of success and ruthlessness are so thick, they basically behave like the weather.
And trying to navigate this toxic mythological weather is our protagonist, Arun Dev. He's a financial analyst. The documents immediately establish his character through this extreme self-discipline.
And breathing, right?
Yes, exactly. His practice of counting his breath is noted as this simple act of control that had outlasted lovers. And he steps into this corporation, and his first assignment is to analyze a huge, high-stakes acquisition.
Which is our logistics. And this is where the financial analysis immediately starts to tell a moral story.
Yeah.
Arun's deep dive into the numbers reveals that the margins, the revenue streams, they're just fundamentally wrong for the logistics sector.
How so?
They are, in his own words, too neat.
Wait, I have to stop you there. We always hear about messy financials being a problem. Why is too neat a red flag in a complex business like global logistics?
Because logistics is, by its very nature, chaos. You've got fluctuating fuel prices, tariffs, delays, accidents. The margins should be jagged. They should be unpredictable.
Okay, that makes sense.
So when everything looks pristine, it suggests the data is manufactured. It's hiding high-risk operations or, illicit activity. Arun concludes this is mafia money in the threads, or a state that behaves like one.
A huge finding. So he presents this massive ethical risk to the CEO, Kornfeld. And the response is just chillingly pragmatic.
It really is. Kornfeld just dismisses it.
Yeah.
He states, very simply, risk can be priced.
Risk can be priced. What a line.
It's a core insight into their entire mindset. It implies there's no such thing as an unacceptable moral hazard, only an expensive one. Any ethical cost, any complicity with crime, it can all be factored into the quarterly earnings forecast.
So it just strips morality completely out of the equation.
Completely. And as Arun starts to understand this price of doing business, we meet the core players who are tasked with managing and controlling this priced risk. First up is Popov, the enforcer.
Right. He appears benign like anyone's uncle, but he represents the philosophical thread of the company. His entire worldview is built on this balance between appetite and will.
And he lays out the transactional nature of this whole power game with one unforgettable, just chilling quote. He says, "Friends are useful until they harvest."
So it's an explicit contract. Every relationship inside this system is temporary, it's conditional, and it's ultimately aimed at self-preservation.
Exactly. And then you have Elodie, who runs corporate communications. The documents call her the tender assassin.
The tender assassin. Her job is explicitly to braid reality, to weave these narratives that are, I guess, structurally true, but contextually false.
And she tasks Arun with becoming the company's mouth. She sees his carefully cultivated reputation for honesty as an asset.
So his job is now to say the false with the face that looks like the true. He has to sell the Earl logistics story using his own credibility as the veneer.
And this brings us to his first real operational mission, moving beyond the spreadsheets. He's sent down to Vesper Wharf, his job, to
Yeah.
physically count the contents of a warehouse.
And this cargo is all branded as relief ventilators, gloves, critical medical supplies.
But the documents reveal the actual function of the cargo. It's debt shaped like generosity.
Charity as a weapon.
Precisely. It's intended to secure port concessions from local governments. This highlights the fundamental conflict that just defines the whole narrative, using geopolitical leverage but masking it with humanitarian aid.
So Arun gets to the warehouse. It's this stark, dusty place. And he meets Mara, the supervisor.
Yes.
She's the complete opposite of the abstracted corporate tower. She is unvarnished reality.
And her first statement to him is just this powerful moral challenge. She says, counting is consent.
Counting as consent. Wow. So what she's saying is...
She's saying his act of quantification, his actual job as an analyst, is inherently an act of complicity. He can't just claim moral distance because he's crunching numbers. By counting the instruments of the corporate lie, he is consenting to its purpose.
And Mara has this devastating critique of that corporate mindset, this idea she calls the debt is drift. Can you break down what that phrase means in practical terms?
It's all about the cost of abstraction. Mara argues that when the financiers in the tower refer to people as units or inputs, they create this intellectual distance. And that distance allows them to do terrible things without feeling them.
Right.
She says, every time we call a person a unit, something leaves us. It is shy. It goes into the trees. The drift is that moral self-abandonment that happens when you disconnect the spreadsheet from the person on the ground.
So she forces Arun to confront the physical cost of the very extraction he's been pricing, and this leads to his test of choice. Arun is told half the cargo has to be diverted, some to a country that genuinely needs it, some to a country that will be used for political leverage. He has to choose.
And his decision is so crucial because it really defines his character from this point on. It's not some explosive, heroic refusal. It's a deliberate act of modest salvation.
So what does he do?
He directs a portion of the relief supplies to a hospital in Kharabad, one that isn't even expecting them. And then he follows up with this ambiguous email, one that's strategically written to be read two ways.
He chooses quiet, pragmatic action over some grand, dramatic rebellion.
Exactly. But the system is watching.
Of course it is.
His small deviation immediately triggers consequences back at the tower. During a major investor call, an unauthorized image of the warehouse just flashes across the monitors, just for a second. But it's enough to create a memory that would breed stories.
And that internal tremor causes a political purge. We immediately learn that Carol Dusek, who worked in a department called Strategic Fictions, he's dead. A fall.
And Popov frames this death so chillingly. He claims Carol saw the shape of our future and got vertigo. The implication is if you see the whole game too clearly, the system will just remove you for being fragile.
And the response to Mara, the witness who spoke the truth, is equally ruthless. Petra Ilyev, the head of security, she decides to just let Mara go.
Right.
Why? I mean, why would they let a potential leaker just walk free? Doesn't that go against every standard security protocol?
Well, it shows a very sophisticated understanding of power dynamics. Petra prefers Mara to be wind rather than an enemy with a face.
An enemy with a face.
Think about it. A defined enemy, a person they arrest, can become a martyr. They can galvanize resistance. But a quiet symptom, an unauthorized image, an anonymous leak that creates confusion, it decentralizes the threat, which the corporation can manage much more easily. They want to keep the fight abstract.
So after this wave of violence, Arun completely shifts his strategy. He moves past the idea of being the hero who exposes the system. Instead, he internalizes this blueprint that Petra Ilyev gives him.
The plumbing quote.
The plumbing quote. Heroes imagine a homecoming. Radicals imagine plumbing.
That is the pivot point of the whole story. Heroes want recognition. Radicals want to change the fundamental pipes and valves of the infrastructure.
So Arun realizes the war isn't one with poetry or big revelations. It's one with meticulously tended processes and forms. He goes from being the company's emotional mouth
to becoming an exacting clerk.
His first strategic move as this radical clerk is his public confession. It's at this opulent Dawn Road gala, a corporate fundraiser described as a mixture of penance and party.
But it's not an emotional speech. His performance is marked by a poverty of performance. He's just strategic and precise.
He weaponizes corporate governance against itself. He demands two things: independent auditors, specifically from Kharabad, and critically, a new policy.
And this is brilliant.
Helix and Thorn will never own a port in a country where it also provides charity. This isn't just moral posturing. It directly attacks the core mechanism of their geopolitical leverage, the very thing they set up in the Euro acquisition.
He forces them to operate within their own supposed rules.
And this puts him back on the ground in Karabad. Popov tasks him with running this new, supposedly ethical foundation. So now Arun is caught between Popov's desire for systemic control and the raw ambition of a rival, Daweed, who's actively trying to compromise him.
Which brings us to the ultimate test, with container 8Q7. Daweed tries to frame Arun by planting a fake, incriminating ledger inside.
Right.
But Arun doesn't try to hide it or deny it. He chooses radical transparency. He brings cameras, auditors, journalists, everyone to the scene. He confronts the lie head-on.
And in doing so, they don't just find the fake ledger. They find the actual contents of the container, which is smuggled memory. Personal items, clothing, a stolen door from a house, the pieces of lives left behind during a crisis.
Just incredible. And this is where Arun makes his most powerful move.
He counters the frame-up and this discovery of smuggled memory by inventing an entirely new administrative category.
Residue. This is the key takeaway from the entire deep dive.
The power of naming things. Tell us exactly how he defines residue and why it becomes this policy weapon.
So officially, he defines residue as the pieces of a life that survive it and must be moved with tenderness. Tariff waived.
Tariff waived.
It's not just a label.
Yeah.
It's a legally enforced policy change. It forces the corporation to acknowledge human cost and memory in its own ledgers. By giving it an official designation and a zero tariff, he turns the most vulnerable, uncounted items into the most protected, acknowledged items.
And it's enforced by the clerks, people like Asha and Famita, who now treat the forms like oaths.
Exactly. So Arun's final goal, following that philosophy, the radical clerk, isn't to save souls. It's simply to ensure decent lighting for the people doing the counting.
He explains this final philosophy to CEO Kornfeld. He says, "We counted the wrong things for too long and found, to our surprise, that it was not fatal to admit it."
The victory isn't in dismantling the system, which is impossible. It's in making it behave more honestly through sustained, meticulous, professional action. Arun's success is a quiet one. It's the prevention of worse outcomes achieved through bureaucratic rigor.
So what does this all mean for you as you navigate your own professional spaces? This deep dive shows that the quiet war is won not with some explosive heroism, but with precision, with persistence, and crucially, with administrative language.
Right. Naming things like residue can be a radical act of resistance. It gives policy room for human reality.
But we also saw the moral cost Arun paid. Popov's ultimate contract was that Arun had to accept loneliness. The deeper you understand the mechanics of the system, the more isolated you become from people who still cling to the convenient abstraction.
Or who just don't see the shadow in the corner.
The core lesson here really comes from Arun's old teacher. You will not become good. You will become honest. This will cost you. The key is that sustained, meticulous action. Or as Arun puts it to Elodie, his former taskmaster.
We will not do good. We will prevent worse with professionalism.
The narrative ends not with a victory parade, but with Arun just taking inventory of his life. He keeps the glass wafer, the pawn, and the handless clock symbols of this complicated reality he now has to carry.
And he learns to stop signing what does not matter. He focuses only on the exact remembrances and the necessary clerical acts.
This idea that the quiet war is fought in these subtle shifts of perception and administrative language is it's incredibly resonant. It implies the most powerful resistance isn't always loud.
Absolutely. And think about the teacher's final observation. He says, if a mirror cracked and did not finish the crack, perhaps it was because someone bored the room at the right moment. So if the system thrives on chaos, on spectacle and dramatic lies, is radical boredom, the meticulous counting of the uncounted, the devotion to correct process, the most powerful weapon you can wield against corruption.
Something to mull over as you organize your files or review your next expense report.
Something like that.
An excellent place to leave that thought. Thank you for joining us for the deep dive. We'll see you next time.